through the minister holding this bag again. And so, first of all, I'm going to talk with Miss Kimberly. Miss Kimberly King Burns. First of all, I want to say welcome. This is me welcoming you, having met you for the first time. That's why I shook your hand when you mounted the platform. And you are from Harbor Island.
Yes, sir.
And when was the last time you were home?
April.
April.
And I go home again on Saturday.
Okay, so you come up on a regular basis?
As often as I can. I live and work in Los Angeles, but I also run a community foundation based on Harbor Island, the Bryland Modem Fund.
Yes.
And applicable to this conference, we've built a number of Vought Island community computer centers in Harbor Island, Eleuthera, Cat Island, and Exuma.
I want to ask you, Ms. Burns, and we are so delighted that you have come home and you continuously come home and you apparently invest at home. And for that, we the Bahamian people thank you. How would you suggest, Ms. Burns, we go about integrating Bahamians abroad with local development, considering that that's something you are practically doing right now?
This style of technology conference is an excellent start because it jumpstarts a conversation that we've long been wanting to have. I grew up on a tiny out island with lots of power outages, lots of water issues. If you grow up in an out island, you grow up with a really pragmatic take on how to problem solve. And I think with Grand Bahama suggesting that they want to lead the way by branding themselves as the nearshore, offshore tech hub for this part of the country, I think that Nassau has an opportunity to give the entire small island nation its wings. Freeing up some of the overlapping regulatory hoops we've had to jump through, allowing us to manage more of our resources, affecting continued hands-on training for everyone involved in the community, from local government, which can largely be considered a fan club as opposed to a group of skilled professionals, working to manage a community, to hotel workers. I mean, there's no such thing as a small job. And, we've been talking a lot this conference about, sun, sand, sea. It's not enough. It's a great start. And the sun can remain the sun for the tourism industry. It can also jumpstart a viable solar industry. The wind is... We've had opportunities in the out islands over the last 20 years that simply couldn't get past the regulatory challenges and hurdles in Nassau. When I was growing up, we had regional power companies that were mostly privately held, and it worked. Centralization was a really good idea, I think, but with 300 islands, 6,000 keys, half of which most people in Nassau couldn't identify to save their lives. I think we've held ourselves back. Technology is giving us the opportunity to move forward, and I think if we could free up some of the regulatory challenges, some of the financial controls, and just some of the maybe, and I don't want to come down on Nassau because I went to St. Augustine's and it was a great education.
Yes.
But Nassau tends to think in terms of what helps Nassau, and I think what needs to happen now is that we talk about Grand Bahama, which has the most impressive physical infrastructure we've seen in a long time, and get to where regulatory and education and finance can coexist.
Thank you. That's impressive. Let's give Mrs. Kimberly a hand. And she's a SLAC student, former student. School where our Prime Minister also attended. Dr. Gadryn Higgs, Silicon Valley also. Tell us, where did you grow up?
So I grew up here in Freeport.
So you're a Grand Bahamian. Can we get his mic? We want to hear this. Grand Bahamian. Is your mic on?
Hello?
Hello? Excuse me. Sound people. There you go. Are you on now?
Hello? A little low. Okay, all right.
Okay. So let's do that question again. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Or where are you from?
Yes, so I grew up here in Grand Bahama.
You schooled here as well?
Yes, so I went to Mary Star of the City Primary School and then Grand Bahama Catholic High School.
Very good. Very good. How long have you been in the United States?
Since high school, which has been about almost 15 years now.
And if I may ask, how old are you for the benefit of some of our inspiring persons in the room?
I'm 30 years old.
Very good. That's wow. Dr. Higgs, what is needed immediately to make us a tech hub or a smart city here in Grand Bahama?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Is
So there's sort of a lot of different ways in which you can take that question. The way I like to think about it is, if you'd want to be attractive to some of the big players who are in the field already, then there are things that you can do. And happy to talk about that. If you want to be able to sort of create everything from here, then there are sort of other things that you would kind of want to do. But what I kind of want to talk about is, what would you need that would sort of encompass both of those, right? So we've heard over the last 2 days that there are a lot of things that Grand Bahama already has that's going for it. It has the infrastructure, it has the location, it has a lot of these other things. Really, there just needs to be a mindset shift. That's sort of the first step in the direction towards being able to enable and unlock these things. So assuming that we can get that mindset shift, that is yes, we can do this type of thing here in the Bahamas. We don't have to solely rely on some of the other industries which have been very helpful for us in the past, but yet we can actually be able to do other things as well. Then we start to have conversations similar to what we're having today, and we can continue to have those conversations so that we can continue to grow. So from the perspective of kind of what needs to be done, if we don't start with that mindset shift, then your dreams will never become the reality. Your dreams will only be realized by you. It won't be realized by others around you. And when you talk about your dreams, it will always be met with skepticism. So just believing that there's the opportunity there and having that shift in order to be able to accomplish it.
You talk about the mind shift. Break it down a little bit more. What do you think we need to do in terms of, what do you want us to shift our minds from?
Yeah,
to?
Sure.
From what to what?
Yes. So oftentimes people tend to think that, and I myself have been guilty of it before, we tend to think that technology is some nebulous thing that's very difficult to do, that's very hard, right? And sure, if you're Elon Musk and you're building rockets to shoot to the moon, then that's one story. But let's remember that's not where Elon started. He started in other endeavors before that, right? So if we think of what could be some opportunities here, I'm sure everyone has probably heard about Uber. We don't have Uber here in the Bahamas, and I don't want to talk about sort of Uber, Bahamas, and why, but what I do want to talk about is look at the model. It's the shared economy model. And what the shared economy model is it's a two-sided marketplace almost. It brings people who have needs, and it brings people who have things that they can provide, and it allows them to be able to connect together. So I share that example because that's one really tangible example of that's something that we can start to embrace in terms of that shared economy model, not in terms of just being part of the users, but being part of the generators, the content creators and the generators for something like this. That platform and the headquarters for Uber doesn't have to exist in San Francisco. That could have existed anywhere, right? But if we can just start to get the exposure and think about what are some of these possibilities, then it's the way in which technology is today. Those things could be anywhere in the world, including here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Higgs. Let's give him a hand. Girl power, Kristie Powell. How often do you come to the Bahamas?
Loaded question. Once a month, actually.
Once a month.
Once a month.
So yeah, and see, this is something I think the audience need to know, because they would not have known that had you not said that. So you're often here once a month. Now,
Once a month. Yep.
you grew up here
Born and raised in Nassau, Bahamas.
in Nassau, Bahamas. Where did you go to school?
I attended Xavier's Lewis School for primary school and St. Anne's for high school.
Okay. Okay. We're proud of all of you. Every one of you on this platform make us proud to be Bahamians. You know, and we often talk about athleticism, and we often boast about athletes, and we talk about everything else we've accomplished in the music world. But this makes us feel good in the intellectual capacity. This is good. It's refreshing. My question to you, Kristie, because you have been up for all day, and I'm not going to put the pressure on the two, I believe, younger personnel here on the platform, but I often think this is something.
I'm older than this guy.
Oh. Okay. All
I'm
right.
another guy. I'm probably that young lady.
But you look well.
Thank you.
You look well. Here's what I often talk about this, and I don't know how prevalent it is even to our present administration. I hope it is, and it will become. But I'm going to throw this out at you. How important you think it is to have a national data bank?
A national data buy-in?
Bank.
Bank. Oh,
Yeah.
bank. Okay, so a national data bank in the sense of understanding our people, or are you referring to data from a different perspective?
Data in the sense of I go to driver's license department,
All right,
I got to
so that's
give
your
one
frustration, I
information.
got you.
I go to the passport, I got to give the same information I just gave to the driver's. You got it.
I got it.
Okay.
That frustrates me too. So it's been a while since I've lived in the Bahamas, obviously, right? But I do know living abroad and having like a social security number, which is synonymous then with a national insurance number. So for example, if I wanted to get a new phone from Verizon, I give them my social security number, I give them my date of birth and my address, and magically this thing appears on my doorstep, my new phone. Here, however, from hearing the experiences and woes of my mother needing to get things from me, means that she now has to go to the national insurance branch. I think there's one on Fox Hill Road near our house, and then she has to drive down to COB if I needed to get a document from them, and then she has to ask me for a copy of my passport, and I'm like, but you gave birth to me, what more evidence do you need? But I do think it's very important for us to have a database of systems that are interconnected. I do think at its core, most of these government agencies are asking for the same set of information. So let's look at that. Let's break that down in its most simplest form. Each of us on stage has a first name. Each of us on stage has a last name. Each of us on stage has a national insurance number. All of us have a date of birth. All of us at least have one phone number, and we all have an address, right? So at its core, is there anything fundamentally different between me and Dr. Higgs? The answer is no, right? We're all described by a certain set of attributes, and these attributes are no different to any government agency. They all think that their problems are unique, but they're really not. Like, these problems have been solved over and over and over across the world. Now, I want a passport. I need a national insurance number. At the end of the day, there should be one central repository where they could put in my national insurance number, especially now that it's digitized, and say, hey, this is Kristie, regardless of whether or not they know how I look or who my parents are, because at the end of the day, again, we are all described by the same fundamental attributes: first name, last name, date of birth, address. Now, when you think about going back down to like medical records, digitizing medical records always often seems insurmountable because of the amount of data, right? Like, I had to get a booster shot, I had to get an MMR, and I needed those things over and over as I went from primary school to high school to university. And each time, honestly, I always have to get the same set of shots over and over and over, even though I didn't need them, but I had no way of proving that I had them. So therein lies the complexity and the challenges with having data fragmented. And then the one question that always comes up that I'll pose to everyone here is, if I have data in location A and I have data about somebody in location B, who's the authority? Who's the authoritative source? Who says that my parents' name are actually spelled the way that it should be spelled in location A versus location B? So when data is in two separate places, neither of those locations have the authoritative data. And I think fundamentally we need to figure that out. Because again, going back to what I said earlier, each of us on stage may look different, we may behave different, but physically we can all be described by the same attributes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Laron.
He's the baby on the stage.
He's the baby. Yes, he is. Laron. Where did you go to school? You started to tell us that earlier today. Yes.
I went to primary school at Freeport Primary, and then high school at St. George's High School.
And how?
St. George's.
Yes, yes. Okay, did you all hear him? Okay, let's start again. What school did you go to?
Can you hear me better? I went to Freeport Primary for primary school, and then St. George's High School for high school. And
I want to ask you, how often do you come home?
not enough.
Not enough. But you had the baby. How long have you been away from us?
4.5 years for university.
4.5 years. Okay, and that's not bad. It's almost time in college, basically. So prior to that, you were here.
Yes.
Okay. And what do you miss about home the most when you're away?
Really, the culture. I think the culture is different, where there's a lot more friendlier and open environment for discussion, right? There's people that I may not even know, but they'll come up and talk to me. And that's happened anywhere, right? If you go to get groceries, you could probably meet somebody new. But in the United States, it's kind of different. So the culture here and that open environment for discussion is perfect here.
Do you intend to, in your future, do you see yourself coming back home?
Definitely.
So you want to come back home?
I want to come back home, yes.
I would actually, these questions are actually my questions. I would ask you the question, but I think that question might have been asked of you already, but I'm just going to throw it out there. On second thought, I don't think so. All right, what would make you want to come back home?
Again, so let's go back to the first question, which is the culture. I think that the entrepreneurial culture is one of open discussion and collaboration, and open discussion happens here in the Bahamas all the time. It's just that we need to shift that discussion from sports and entertainment to intellectual stuff and business. That's about it. And I think being abroad, you see so many opportunities, and you're like, wow, we're not doing that yet. It's just so many opportunities to do stuff like that, and so many opportunities to give back in very small ways, but impact the people here a lot.
He is the baby on the stage, so I'm not going light on him. I'm just trying to ask the right and appropriate questions, also based on his age. By the way, those of you who don't know, he's 22 years of age, and already he's an intellectual giant. With that being said, in your answer to my previous question, then I'm going to ask you this, being the younger one on the stage, where would you like to see Grand Bahama from a technical and cyber perspective 10 years from today?
What I would love to see, I would love to see Grand Bahamians build and start their own tech hub and their tech startups. I really believe that the resources are there for us to start it ourselves. The community is there, the open collaboration is there. Again, we just need to shift the discussion. It's part of the mind shift. Shift the discussion to where we will talk about businesses and how we will help each other create these ventures. And in 10 years, I would love to see a lot of Bahamian-owned tech companies in the cyber industry as well as the manufacturing industry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Kristie, I'm coming back to you and Dr. Higgs. I think I basically asked Ms. Kimberly already, but how can, starting with you, Kristie, followed by Dr. Higgs, how can you use your knowledge and experience and even connections to help develop Grand Bahama as this technical hub that we're pushing?
So, you know, when you knock on enough doors, someone has to answer. I'm knocking on doors, sir, and I'm talking, and I'm trying to spread the word and trying to spread the message, but oftentimes it falls on deaf ears. I find that people listen a little bit more with their eyes than they do with their ears sometimes, and it's unfortunate. So starting with sessions like these, attending tech summits, letting people know that they have ambassadors for the country spread all across the world who are doing amazing things, but yet still the Bahamas is lagging behind, means that as a country, we are doing something wrong. And it means that as a country, there's so much room for us to do more. With the expertise that I've gained over the last several years of working abroad, it is my responsibility, as well as everyone else's responsibility who are on this stage, to continue to travel and continue to ask those questions of, well, why aren't we doing that in the Bahamas? And it's very important not to give up, and it's very important for everybody in this room to understand that if you have kids, if you are a parent, if you are a guardian of one, to tell them not to give up on their dreams, because it is hard. And there are going to be times when they face adversity, and there will be times when people just flat out say no. And that is very, very discouraging. There are lots of people in my age group who are abroad who want to come back home, and they always talk about the fact that there's no opportunity because the old folks in the room just don't want to move out of the way. And we kind of have to wait for them to be... We got to put them in a wheelchair for them to move out the way. Don't do it? Oh, go. Oh, wait. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but you know, hey, it's my opinion. And I was sharing this with Senator Thompson yesterday that, you know, a lot of members of Parliament, you know, are lawyers. And they can cite something from an article from the High Supreme Court, and I wouldn't be able to tell my head from my tail. And when I come up here and I start talking about fast Fourier transforms or some C++ algorithm, you too can't tell your head from your tail.
Yes, you're right.
But if you don't admit that you can't tell your head from your tail, then we move nowhere.
Amen.
And I think now as a government, as well as from an enterprise level, we need to work together, but we need to make sure that we surround ourselves with smart people who can help to move us forward. So the only thing I can do from where I am is knock on doors and hope that somebody opens as much as I can.
Dr. Higgs.
So when I think about the expertise and the experiences that I've had, over the last many years, a few things keep kind of coming back, at least for me. And one of the things that I really sort of enjoy or am really passionate about is technology. So I love the fact that today we can be sitting here having a discussion about technology. So when I think about the role in which, let's say, an exposure that I've had, particularly being out in the Valley, and what are some of the things that I've learned out there, and Laron would have highlighted some of this today as well as some of the other speakers, which is how do you get something from being just an idea into reality? And that's the part that really excites me. That's the part that it's hard to explain. For those of you who probably haven't had the chance to build something that you've created, whether that's a physical product, whether that's a website, whether that's an app, whatever it is, just the process of going through something like that and developing it, and then turning around and seeing it being used by people who you know, and seeing the experience that they have by going through it, it's a phenomenal experience. So for me, when I think about like going through the process of learning what it's like to do that, it's not easy. It's challenging. It's hard. Laron hit on some of the big things that people run into when they try to do these things. And when we think about, okay, we want to be doing some of the things that we see happening in other parts of the world. Well, in order to do that, we sort of have to understand already what are they doing and how are they able to do what they do. And so I feel as though my experiences over there have been able to help me learn more about what that is like. And while I wouldn't consider myself to be an expert by Silicon Valley standards, I surely have enough of that experience to be able to help guide folks going through that process here in the Bahamas in a better way than had they not had someone who had that exposure.
Miss Kimberly, I'm going to ask that you give us a final word of wisdom.
We are very many islands. We are very many perspectives. The economics of one island are not consistent with the economics of other islands. And I welcome the opportunity to expose and introduce and educate Bahamian entrepreneurs in the opportunity to really make a difference. I mean, as Kristie was talking about, e-government is a huge aspect. Until recently, if you wanted to renew your passport or renew a business license on Harbor Island, you had to physically fly to Nassau, make an appointment. And, it's not as though our flights and our boat, mailboat transportation is that highly scheduled, would be the diplomatic way to put it. So we've got a real opportunity to unite a lot of islands, farmers, workers, industrialists, financial folks, to expand around the country with Grand Bahama as our beacon. And I think what we want to do is remain open to the possibilities. I don't think there are any rules out there. It's a constantly changing financial and industrial world. And instead of running away from it, I look forward to opportunities like this to show how we can embrace it and empower Bahamians.
Ladies and gentlemen of this panel, I want to say on behalf of the persons in this room and who have been in this room this morning and on yesterday, you are true ambassadors for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in the area and the field that you're in. Once again, we cannot say how proud we are of you and how highly you are representatives of us in another country, again, you make the 242 look real good. Thank you so much.